Hey everybody, hi. I'd like to welcome you all, some new, some old, which is always nice to see. Um, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Susan Cohen. I'm the director of Tikva Mental Health Programme and Tikva Line, which is our 24 hours, 24/7 emotional support line. And I'm the director of that programme. Mike, who is here, Mike Mayhem I've been working alongside Mike now for how long, Mike? A long time.
27 years.
Possibly, maybe slightly less. Mike's our guru. Mike is like one of the most knowledgeable people about the IDF that you could ever wish to meet. He knows what he doesn't know is, well, it's not worth knowing. So I'd like to hand over to Mike. Mike, if you can do your magic, please.
Be my pleasure.
Thank you.
So, good evening, everybody. My name is Mike. I'll give you a little bit of my background and then we'll go right into what we're going to talk about. I'm originally from Englewood, New Jersey. I fell here 43 years ago in Israel, where I became a soldier. I fought in the first Lebanon War. Then, several years later, I was active in the second Lebanon War. And I did about 20 years of reserves in Gaza. So my experience is very, let's put it that way. What I do with lone soldiers, I'm going to use the language that I use with them. A lone soldier for me, well, you know what? Let's do it even smarter. What is a lone soldier? Somebody want to give the answer? Nobody know? Are you all going to be shy?
Yeah. So
It is a soldier who is Olim.
Soldier who is no lay.
Yep.
Okay, so the first answer is incorrect.
right.
Okay.
They're without their family, namely, parents, and usually parents without their parents and nuclear family.
Right. A lone soldier is somebody who's been decided by the IDF as a person that does not have parental, uh, how do you say it, members with them in Israel. But I'm going to take it even further. How many different types of lone soldiers are there? There are two different types. There are I'm sorry?
There's the Israeli lone soldiers.
Right. There's the Israeli lone soldier, which is an Israeli born and raised in Israel, who for some reason, either their parents passed away, or they left their parents' house, or they were kicked out of their parents' house. And why would that be? Well, there are many young people who decide they would like to join the IDF, who come from very religious backgrounds, and their parents feel that they should not go to the army. And if they want to go to the army, they kick them out of the house. Okay, so for example, I'm dealing right now with a young lady who was born in Mea Sharim. Everybody knows where Mea Sharim is. Lovely young lady. Grew up, obviously very Orthodox. And when she became 18 years old, she told her parents, I've decided that I'm going to go to the army. And her father looked at her and said, that's fine. Pack what you can, leave the house, and never come back. Okay, those are the Israeli lone soldier. The other lone soldiers are people like myself and the rest, which are people that come from outside of Israel and want to serve in the Israeli army. And they find one way or another, we're going to go into that in a few seconds, to draft into the army. To break it down in percentage wise so you have an idea, there are approximately 7,200 lone soldiers in Israel. Now, with the war, I'll be very honest with you, that number has started to shift. And where has it started to shift? Well, countries that are not third world countries, like the United States, like Canada, some of the families have decided, you want to go to the army? No problem. Once the war is over, we'll talk about it. Some young people also decide, I want to serve the country and I want to be in Israel, but do I want to be in Israel during the time of a war? And for that reason, some choose not to draft and do other programs. For example, they may come and work for Magen David Adom and volunteer with hospitals, but they don't want to put a uniform on. Okay? So when we look at the percentages from the 7,200 lone soldiers, 48% of them are Israeli lone soldiers. 52% of them are non-Israeli born lone soldiers, meaning people that come from outside the country. And that can be a young person whose family lived in Israel, but they decided to move to America, move to France, move to Canada, and they remained there. And at some point, their children decided they wanted to go to the army. That still will allow them to be lone soldiers because their parents will not be in Israel for more than 4 months time. Because once a family comes to Israel for more than 4 months, the status of being a lone soldier can be removed. Because at that point, they have a parent living in Israel, and therefore they don't need all the benefits that somebody who does not have parents here. So far, any questions? Very
Yes.
good.
So does someone who comes here and does not want to put on a uniform, let's say works for MDA or something, are they considered a lone soldier?
No, but they can be what's called a lone bat shirut, or a lone.
Right.
How do you say bat shirut in English? Good question.
Well,
People that volunteer but not
Alternative
into the army.
service.
a female volunteer.
National service, exactly.
Right.
They can come for up to 2 years, not go to the army, and do national service. Okay, and of those, there are approximately between 500 and 700 every year of people who come from outside of Israel to be bnei banot shirut, and not only female but also male. Okay,
Mhm.
so now we get an idea when we're talking about lone soldiers, really how many we're talking about. 7,200 on the one hand is not a lot, but on the other hand is a very big number. Okay, because those 7,200 have got to be taken care of by the Army with special benefits. For example, a lone soldier will receive a paycheck which is 40% higher than an Israeli that is serving in the army. So, for example, because I live in Israel, my daughter could not become a lone soldier because I was here. And at that time, she earned 800 shekels a month. That was her pay. The lone soldier was earning 3,400 shekels a month. Big difference. Big difference in a number. Little difference in what you can achieve with that number. Okay? On top of receiving a higher paycheck, they also receive 1,800 shekels a month for rental assistance that's added to their paycheck. So now we've gone from 3,400 shekels another 1,800 shekels, or up to 5,000 plus shekels. But again, put it into perspective now. 1,800 shekels to help with rent. If you want to live in a city like Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, uh, Netanya, a main city, the average apartment is going to run between 3,500 shekels and 8,000 shekels. Okay? So that means that if a lone soldier wants to live in an apartment, there's a very good chance that they're going to have to find 2 or 3 other people to rent the apartment with.
Mike, can I just interrupt you?
Go right ahead.
Tanya's got a raised hand, so she has a question for you.
Yeah,
Go right ahead.
sorry, I wanted to interrupt. Is there such a thing as a non-Jew lone soldier? Because I know people volunteer and they come from different countries. I've heard from countries that are not necessarily, they're not Jewish. I don't know, how does the IDF accept non-Jewish
That's a great
volunteers?
question. The answer is, if you are coming from outside of Israel to draft into the army, yes, you must be Jewish.
Okay.
And you have to bring a letter from your community rabbi saying that you are Jewish and that you have some participation in that community.
In that community. And
Okay?
if you are Israeli but not Jewish, like for the examples of the Jews community, they do come to the army like any other Israeli
Absolutely.
citizen.
The Drusim, the Bedouins, those that serve in the army serve like everybody else. Now, if they don't have parents or they claim that they're not in communication with their parents, they can request to become lone soldiers. And if they do, they may get partial or all benefits for the lone soldier.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, does that answer your question?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
It's a great question because I get many calls from people who come on different programs like Sarel or come and volunteer in Israel,
Right.
fall in love with Israel and say they want to join the army. And unfortunately, it's not going to happen.
Yossi's got his hand up as well, Mike.
I'm sorry?
Yossi has his hand up as well.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yossi has got his hand up. He wants to ask you a question.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Yossi.
Thank you. If a soldier says that he's not in contact with his parents, how thoroughly do the army check that?
Good question. If a soldier says that he's not in contact with the parents, in the army, there is the equivalent of a soldier whose job is to be like a social worker. It's called a mashaki tash. Okay? In the army, we refer to them as the kotel for the soldier. Because when they have to cry about something, they go to their mashaki tash. Okay? So what they have to do is they have to go to their mashaki and request to become a lone soldier. And then they go through a 3-month process where they have to provide bank information so they can see what's going in and out of their account. They have to have their parents' phone numbers. Their phone numbers, they will be called and they will be interviewed to see if there's any contact between them. That can take up to 4 months and has to be renewed every year that soldier is in the army. Okay? The truth of the matter is, many Israeli lone soldiers that come from unfortunate backgrounds will come up with an agreement with their parents that they're going to apply to it. And then they come to an agreement with their parents that when the army calls, that they're going to tell them, we are not in touch, we don't speak with them, we don't see eye to eye, and he lives somewhere else. And again, they will check to see if there's any money being transferred from the parent's account to the soldier's account, and they have to provide 3 months of bank information to see exactly what's showing up in their account. And obviously, if their bank account is filled with money, then they obviously don't need that money. So they will be denied. Okay, fair enough. So we got down to understanding how many lone soldiers there are, how it's broken down. Now let's take a look at the breakdown as to where they come from. Again, 48% of them come from within Israel. 52% of them come from outside of Israel. From the 52% that come from outside of Israel, the highest number is Russian background. Okay? Russian meaning from Russia or from Russian speaking countries. After that, the next highest group are from North America and Canada. After that, we start going to smaller countries or countries with less issues like France, Portugal, Italy. And for some, it's very interesting. With France, we had a very interesting problem for a while. When anti-Semitism was very high in France, many parents decided that they would send their children to Israel to go to the army to start a life here, and hopefully they would be okay. So that raised the number of the people speaking French that were drafting into the army. So it's all relative. It's all relative to what's going on in the world at the moment. Right? The United States always has one of the largest numbers simply because they can afford to. Right? Because when they think about their kid coming to, do any of you have children that are serving in the or have served in the Israeli army? No. Oh, you do. Okay. So where were your children born?
Mine,
Yes.
um, all three of them in New York.
Okay. And at what age did you guys make Aliyah?
My eldest was 13.
He came by
Uh,
himself, or you guys came as a family?
we all came as a family.
Wonderful. And when you did, you took care of housing, food, medicine, everything, right?
Yeah.
The issue with a lot of the Russians is they are leaving third world country and they have no connection and no family and they have nothing. They come literally with they come with what they're wearing, okay, or a small bag, but they don't come like us Americans with 15 suitcases and we're all set. Okay, so now we've broken down the different countries that they come from. So again, what is a lone soldier? How many there are? What is the percentage of Israeli, non-Israeli? And then from what countries they come from. Now we're going to talk about it. Well, you know what? I'll take a second there. If anybody has any questions so far. Unlike the past, I'm trying to be very succinct in my information so that you guys can process it easier. And then afterwards, at the end, I'll open it up and we'll talk about other things. Okay? So now we're going to talk about, for those that are coming from outside of the country, how do they go to the army? Great question, Susan. So I'll tell you how they come to the army. There are three major ways they can draft into the army. One is via a program called Machal. Machal means Mitnadvei Chutz La'aretz, volunteers from outside of the country. These are young men and women that come on their foreign passports. They do not make Aliyah, and they serve for 18 months. The duration of their service is 18 months. They come, process through everything, and then it is decided based on their level of Hebrew if they have to go to a army ulpan for 3 months or if they can be drafted directly into a unit. Okay? That's called Machal. Another way of drafting is through an organization that's called Garin Sabar. Garin Sabar is part of the Scouts, the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts of Israel. We had in the 80s and 90s a great issue with the amount of Israelis that moved out of Israel and went to work and live in other countries. However, many of them wanted their children to maintain a connection with Israel. And one of the things the scouts in Israel did is they create a program where once finished high school, they can request to join a program called Garin Sabar, where they are tested in and then they're brought to Israel. They usually live together on a moshav or on a kibbutz for the duration of their service, and then they do whatever they want. Okay? So, again, that's Garin Sabar. They come as a group from outside the country on a very formalized group with rules and regulations that they have to abide by. And it also limits some of the units they can serve in. Okay? The third way that an individual can join the IDF is by individually making aliyah. So, for example, in my day, when I wanted to go to the army, I went to the Jewish agency and I said, "Hi, my name is, I'm Jewish. Here's my proof." They processed it. They said, "Great." And within 4 months, I was drafted. Okay. The correct way that it's done today is they use an organization like Nefesh B'Nefesh. They apply. And however, because they're not Israeli citizens when they make Aliyah, they are not drafted for the first year that they're in Israel. Okay, that's called Shnat Istaglut. It's a year of accommodation. In that year, the Jewish agency, Nefesh B'Nefesh, the country, hopes that the individual will become familiar not only with language, but also with the culture of Israel. Does it work? I want to be honest with you. No, it does not work. And many of the kids don't prepare. And the next thing they know, they're getting drafted. And then they're wondering what they're doing. Okay? So those are the different ways they can draft into the Army. Any questions about that? Oh, you guys are really easy. Now that they've made Aliyah and they've been accepted to draft, there are 5 steps that they have to do. They have to do their Tzav Rishon. Tzav Rishon is their first interaction with the Army. Okay? During that Tzav Rishon, they do 5 things. First thing is they take a Hebrew test. In the Army, Hebrew is measured from 2 until 8. If you score a 5 or lower, it is mandated that you must do an Army Ulpan. That Army Ulpan is done in the north at a place called Mikveh Alon, where they go for 3 months. Okay? Once they get to the Mikveh Alon, they take another Hebrew test, and after the 3 months, they do another Hebrew test, and if their Hebrew has not improved, it will limit to what units they can go to. For example, if a male does not score a 5 or higher after their 3 months at Mikveh Alon, they cannot draft into combat. And for you, you think, you know what? Okay, so what? Many of the kids that come to draft into the Army, especially Americans, all come here to be the next Rambo. And what is Rambo? What do I mean by that? For example, I speak to them all the time and they say, "Mike, I want to be in the next Sayed. Sayed is the Special Forces units. And I say to them, wow, that's amazing. And then I ask them a question in Hebrew. And they say, dude, I don't know what you just said. And that's when I tell them, I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm going to tell you guys the same secret about the Israeli army. And they say, yeah, what's that? And I tell them, in the Israeli army, we speak Hebrew. And they say, why are you saying that? Because if your Hebrew is not good enough, you can want to be a combat pilot, but you are not going to be. You can want to go to combat, but you're not going to combat. So if you want to really work on it, start learning Hebrew. For example, I have a young lady. Her name is Buchi. I'm madly in love with her. She's a wonderful young lady. She gave me a call the first day that her mikveh alone started. And she said, Mike, I was told to call you because I want to be a matagit. A matagit is a position which teaches soldiers to prepare for combat. However, I don't speak, my Hebrew's terrible. She said, I told her, are you willing to work hard? And she said, yes. So if you're willing to work hard for the next 3 months, every day you and I are going to speak for 20 minutes. And in those 20 minutes, we're going to add 5 new Hebrew words to your vocabulary. And then you have to come back to me with sentences using those words. This young lady, I got to tell you, drove me nuts. She called me every day and she'd start speaking to me in Hebrew, saying things that make no sense, words that make no sense. But you know what? She was willing to work hard, and I took every word with her, worked on them, conjugated them correctly, taught her to put them in the right tense, and she worked on it. Last week, she finished Mikvelon. Today, I had her go to the main base in Tel Aviv to get her job. And I told her, Ruchi, what you're going to do, you're going to go in with confidence and you're going to speak Hebrew the way that you now know how to speak Hebrew. She said, yeah, but Mike, I don't speak perfect. I said, I've been here for 43 years. I still don't speak perfect. And that's okay. The goal is to make yourself understood. So let's work on it. You're going to go in, you're going to talk to the person. You're going to say, my name is, this is what I want. This is what I'd like to do. This is what I'm qualified to do. Please give me the opportunity. At 6 o'clock, she went there at 8 o'clock this morning. She called me back at 6 o'clock this morning, this evening, after she sat outside the commander's office all day. And she said, Mike, you won't believe this. I said, believe me, there's much that you can say that will surprise me at this point. She said, I did exactly what you said. I spoke with confidence. I spoke with words that I knew how to say in Hebrew. And you know what he said to me? You are going in 2 days to do the tryouts for that job. Yeah. And that's how we help soldiers to become great soldiers. Okay? Mm-hmm. So the first thing that they have to do in their Tzav Rishon is they do a Hebrew test. The second thing they do that day that they're doing their first interaction with the Army is they're doing a test for their DAPAR, DAPAR, which is like an IQ test, right? This test starts with things like there are 3 circles and 1 square. Which one does not fit? And leads up to math that, my God, you have to be a genius to do. The average Israeli, and when I say the Israeli, born and raised in Israel, scores on that test between 40 and 60. If you score above a 60, somebody needs to bow down to you because you have just achieved, a level of greatness. Now, the secret that I'm going to tell you about that test is lone soldiers usually score very well on that test because their normal daily life is much higher than a young person who lives at home, doesn't do laundry, doesn't cook, just shows up, goes to school, and goes back home. Lone soldiers don't have anybody here. They want to eat, they have to go buy food. They want to wash, they want to have clean uniforms, they have to wash their uniforms. So their general interaction with life is on a much higher level. They have to pay rent. They're paying rent from their pocket, not from their parents' pocket. So the challenge is greater. So they score higher on that test. Okay? So the first two tests, one is Hebrew, second is an IQ test. Then they go for a physical. The physical for a person who has made Aliyah is the same paperwork that they had to submit when they made Aliyah, which means it's very incomplete. It's very incomplete. And many of the kids have learned already that if they let the army know too much, then they're going to limit what they can do. So many of them exaggerate by not telling the truth. For example, mental health. Many of them say that they have no mental health problems and they have no history of mental health. Susan can tell you alone. We have seen many kids who have traumatic mental health backgrounds and they try to lie their way into the army. And if they succeed in lying their way into the army, once they're in the army, reality hits them because, for example, when you go into a combat unit, your commander is not telling you about what a wonderful person you are. You're being yelled at from morning to night. And those that have mental backgrounds of anxiety or trauma, it starts to surface again. Right, Susan? Am I saying right? Is my saying?
Unfortunately, you're telling 100% the truth, but I mean, we get them really quite quickly as well, don't we, Mike? We've had people who've been in the training for less than a week and their mental health has really exploded. We've ended up either sidetracked. Mike has either got them into a different kind of job or we've actually got them out the army. Because one thing every soldier has to learn to do is to fire a gun, whether they're going into combat or not. And if somebody has PTSD when around loud noises, that can be the first trigger that they experience when they go into the army. And when they do start to tell lies, it's so stupid. I get that, as Mike said before, especially the boys, they want to be Rambo. That's the phrase, that's the phrase that they're using. They want to be Rambo. They want to come here. They want to be in the IDF. They want to be in combat. They want to be fighting for the state of Israel and the Jewish people. Purely, idealistic. Why not? Young people. But they lie. And when they lie, they don't realize the impact on how that's going to literally ruin their career in the army on many occasions.
And in some cases, puts an end to their life.
And their future as well, because Mike will tell you that if they have to be released from the army on what we call a 21, which is due to mental health, then that affects their job prospects leaving the army, like security, for argument's sake. Getting a job in security, which is a really good job, like the airports and all those kind of things, police and whatever, they've actually got much less chance of being able to secure jobs in those fields by being dismissed from the army on a 21. So
absolutely,
it's a big problem. It's a big problem.
I, for example, today, for 3 hours, spent 3 hours working with a head commander of a combat unit, telling him that there's a specific soldier that by the end of today has to turn in her gun. And if she doesn't turn in her gun, I am personally going to her base and I'll be taking it away from her myself. I will not allow this soldier to endanger their lives or anybody else's. And I have taken guns away from soldiers on many events. And I have no, as Susan can tell you, I have no embarrassment being very tough I need to be. Okay? So we're still on their Tavishon. They did their Hebrew test. They did their IQ test. Did their mental and physical health evaluation. Then they have an interview, usually with an officer, and they want to find out the background of the individual. For example, your parents are divorced. Do you get along better with your mother or your father? And if you say your mother, why? What does your mother do that your father doesn't? So they're really going to try and cut into them to find out where their social balance is, family wise and interactive wise with other people. And that to me is very important. Very important. Okay? Many soldiers don't make it through that interview. And many of them, again, lie. So now I'm going to tell you a little funny story about a soldier that lied. He called me up and he said, "Listen, Mike, I have a problem." I said, "What's the problem?" "I smoke a lot of weed." So I said, the Army's not going to love you for that. Here's what you do. For the next 3 weeks, you're not smoking anything and you're dousing yourself with, you're drinking a ton of water so that it thins out in your system. And then he went to his Tavishon. One of the things they have to do in the Tavishon is a urine test. So he went and he did his urine test. The next morning, I got a telephone call from that doctor that processed his urine test. And he called me up and says, "Mike, listen, we have a problem. I need you to come down to the office today." And I'm thinking to myself, that's a 4-hour ride. But I went and he said, "Here's the problem. We processed Yossi's urine test and he's pregnant." And I thought to myself, this is brilliant. So I called him up and I told him, "Yossi, come here right now." So he got on a bus and came down here. And in front of the Army doctor, I said, "Yossi, I want you to know that we're about to break history. You are going to be the first male that ever came to be a soldier in the Israeli army that's pregnant." And I looked at him and he said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You know the urine that you brought for your urine test, which wasn't yours? I have one question. Was it your girlfriend's or your sister's? Because if it was your girlfriend, buddy, you're about to become a father. And if it was your sister, you can take a deep breath, you're going to become an uncle." So he said, "Thankfully, it was my sister's." So I said, "Great." The head commander looked at him and said, "Brilliant. Just so you now cannot draft. You will no longer be allowed to draft in the Israeli army. Period." So if you want to lie, make sure it's a lie you can back into. Okay? So far, any other questions? I was kind of hoping that he was pregnant. I would have loved to have seen where it would have come out. The reason I say that is because I delivered both of my daughters. So I would have been very happy to deliver his baby. But it didn't happen. Okay?
I have a question, Mike.
Go right ahead.
Well, it's just the overall impression I'm getting is that the Army, despite needing more soldiers and needing the Haredim and everything, they're still quite selective. They're not relaxing their standards. They're still very stringent in screening people out.
The good question. The answer is yes and no.
Okay.
By law, if a young person is drafting and has a history of, it is mandated by the Army that on their application they must write down all the information. And that's where I get a lot of calls from parents whose kids are about to draft. Mike, do we tell the truth? And I gotta say, if you're a parent and you're asking me if you should lie about your child, what's wrong with this picture? And they said, well, but we want our son to have the best opportunity they can. So let me tell you about the best opportunity you can. 3 weeks ago, we had a new immigrant from Norway who did the Mikpelon, the 3 month Army Opan, and from there drafted into the paratroopers. He was in the paratroopers for less than 3 months, which means he was still in basic training. One night when he went out on basic training, he was on guard duty at the front gate. They found him dead on the floor. He took his gun, put it to his forehead, and he blew his brains out. As it turns out, a wonderful, wonderful child, wonderful person. But he had a history of mental health issues. What do you do? Do you tell the truth or do you tell a lie?
Unfortunately, this is not an uncommon problem. And this is a problem that Mike and I have tried to meet with the Army, and we have met with the Army, haven't we, Mike, on a few occasions.
Yeah.
Their screening process for lone soldiers, this is idyllic. This, what Mike is telling you, is the ideal plan. But unfortunately, the ideal plan doesn't always happen. And they don't have the correct information, and they don't check the way they ought to check. They're, very short staffed, a lot of soldiers that want to come in, and things get missed. And people who should not be drafting, who should not be allowed to be drafted, unfortunately, are getting drafted. And the suicide rate in the Army has gone way up. And my prediction is that this is going to be an epidemic going forward because of the lone soldiers not managing, B, because people are seeing such horrific things that the treatment that they're receiving is not yet as it ought to be in many cases. Some are getting very good treatment, don't get me wrong, but it's really difficult. And this is going to be something that's going to go upwards, unfortunately. And if the parents are asking a question, Mike, what do I do? Do I lie or do I tell the truth? And first of all, shame on the parents for raising their children in that way.
Right. The way I answer that question is, do you know what the difference is between the truth and the lie? And they say, well, obviously. I said, yeah, if it's so obviously, tell me what it is. And they get all nervous, don't say anything. So I tell them, I'll tell you. If you tell the truth, all you have to remember is the truth. If you tell a lie, you have to remember the truth and the lie. The problem is when you do it so often, the line between the two becomes very thin.
And at the end of the day, what is the point in lying when your children have mental health problems? What is the risk?
Because my son wants to be a paratrooper. Because my son wants to be a tank driver.
Yeah, who has a question? Tanya.
Tanya, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I'm just wondering if a family is honest, right? A boy comes and he shows that he has some sort of mental health issues in the past, especially today. We have so many people diagnosed with ADHD or ODD, these things that kind of like are all over the place because of school systems.
Right.
How does that affect them in their future? So if the IDF, for example, says we can't draft you because of your mental health issues, how is that recorded into their what I don't know how you would describe,
in their
like,
file
right,
are
in their
copies
file
of their
to
past
right,
history.
exactly. How is that? Because I can imagine that a lot of people, not only do they want to be paratroopers or, in combat, whatever it is, they also kind of want to hide something that might um, affect their future in careers, or I don't know. I'm wondering if these, them being honest doesn't also affect them after the army, or if they're not drafted in whatever they could do in society.
Usually, when somebody drafts with an issue, it's a pre-existing issue. It's recorded as that, and the Army does not play with it, touch it. It is what it is, and that's all. Right? Depending to what level, they may decide, okay, bring us a follow-up from a psychiatrist that you are no longer under such an extreme quantity of medication and that you're showing signs of doing better, and we can still draft you. It may not be to a combat unit, but you can still get many great jobs in the Army. I'll define that so it's very clear. Okay, now I'm saying this because I was a commander in the Army myself and in combat. 25%, up until the beginning of this war, 25% of the Israeli Army were combat soldiers. Right now, it's getting closer to 40%, but that's not the point that I'm trying to make. 25 are combat, which means 75% of the jobs in the Israeli Army are non-combat jobs. And the way that I used to teach my soldiers is the reason why it's 75 is because combat soldiers screw up so many times that it takes twice as many people to fix all the mistakes they make. And that's what we have to live with.
But also, just filling into this as well, and might help everybody. The IDF have actually now there are certain skills with people with OCD and autism. They've developed special units because
Absolutely.
see the
It's great you said that because that was the next thing I was going to say. We are one of the only armies in the world that draft autistic men and females. Some of them even go to an elite computer unit because with their level of autism, they can see things on screens that people like you and I cannot. So they decipher many things on computers that the non-autistic person cannot. And because Israel is an innovative country, we really put a lot forward to making sure that those opportunities are made available. Right? And less autistic issues. There are many units that have autistic men and women who work in the kitchens, who work in offices, who help organize things, and they do amazing jobs. And their commanders treat them with such dignity and respect that it's amazing. I was not too long ago at a ceremony for autistic young men and women. I have never, I've been part of this army since 1982. I have never in my life seen so much respect given to a young human being for doing their job well. I stood there and I cried because knowing what Susan and I go through every day to try and help these kids, well, it's not that easy. And with that, I'm going to, who here speaks Hebrew? Anybody amongst you speak Hebrew? Okay. You just signed your own warrant.
That's
You ready?
fine. Bring it on.
All right. I'm going to give you a word in English. Tell me what it is in Hebrew. You ready?
I'll try.
Susan, what's the word? Say it again.
empathy.
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 Empath, yeah.
That's
That's how I
English.
know
That's
it.
not Hebrew.
No word.
I knew that that's what you were going to say. Is not one Israeli can tell me what the word for empathy is in Hebrew. And you know why? Because Israelis don't understand what it is. We are not an empathetic people. We're not.
Himla.
Especially not in the army.
But there is a word for compassion. That's rachamim. That's
Himla.
not the same thing as
Compassion is not empathy.
It's not empathy.
No, she's saying chemla. That's good.
Yeah.
Himla.
Okay. So, for example, when I work with a soldier and they call me crying, Mike, I'm really having a hard time. You got to help me. Please, 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 please. I tell them, okay, here's what we're going to do. I want you to take a deep breath, close your eyes, take a deep. I am not a therapist, so please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But I tell them, close your eyes, take a deep breath in through your nose. God knows you're all Jewish, so you have big noses anyway. Big breath through your nose. Hold it, count to four, count to four, and let it out of your mouth. And then I say, okay, how are you feeling now? She said, oh my God, I can't believe it. I can breathe again. I said, okay, 3 more times do that. And they do that. And all of a sudden, I can already see them on the phone. They're relaxed. And my next question is, you called me because you're having a problem. Share with me what your problem is. Let's work on it together and we'll come to a conclusion. I will help you. And many of them say to me, I want you to know you're the first person. I've been in the Army now for 2.5 years. You're the first person to ever say to me, take a deep breath, think, relax, and tell me what's on your mind. Because the average commander, all they know how to do is to yell, demand, and wonder why things are not getting done. And that's why people like yourselves and myself, we bring empathy to the picture when we're helping a young person. That is amazing. I'll give you another one. I was working with a young lady today who's in the process of becoming a paramedic. Very, very hard course in the Israeli army to be a paramedic. And she said, Mike, after a half an hour speaking, you are incredible. I can't believe how nice you are to me. And I said, wait a minute. Every minute you say thank you to me, the thank you goes to you. And she says, what do you mean? And I said to her, for the past 2.5 years, you've been putting your uniform on every day? She said, yes, I have. I said, I want you to know something. Every night I go to sleep and I close my eyes. And I asked her, you know why I close my eyes? She says, no, tell me. Because I have you protecting me. And many of them start crying when I say that to them. And they say to me, how is it that nobody else ever thought of saying something so kind as that to me? And I told her, it's not important. What's important is where we are now. So let's take it a step further. Tell me what it is you want to do, and I will help you get there. And I always finish off by telling them this. We've now been on the phone. For the first time I'm on the phone with a soldier for a half an hour or more. I tell them, listen, here's how it works now that we've been speaking to each other for the past half hour. Starting today, you are now part of my family. And they say, what? I said, that's right. You and I have spent the past half hour on the phone together. You are now part of my family. Let me tell you what that means. I don't care if it's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. You're having a terrible, hard time. Call me. Call me and say, Mike, I hate you, I'm having a terrible day and they need somebody to yell at. And I tell them, I welcome that. And we sit on the phone as long as we need to until I calm them down. I'm sure that they're not going to hurt themselves or somebody else. And we start working forward. Questions, thoughts? You have 3 children here in Israel, right?
I do. My fourth was born here.
Amazing. How old is the oldest one?
Sorry,
How old is your oldest one?
30.
30. Amazing.
He was the hardest, actually, coming at the beginning of seventh grade. And we hate you. You're the worst parents, and you ruined my life. He went straight from high school into the army, didn't want to go into a different program. He just wanted to get it over with. It ended up being the most incredible thing for him. I was just, he was put in a place that he shouldn't have been. And somebody, one Mifaked, looked at him, said, "What are you doing here?" Sent him back to the Bakum. He ended up in the Kiryat and ended up signing on almost 3 years of Keva. And he spent almost 6 years in the army. It was
Amazing.
unbelievable.
And all that because somebody was empathetic enough to say, we're going to help you.
Yeah. It was hard.
Imagine
It was
that.
very, very bumpy.
Imagine that. I tell parents, I speak to many parents before their children draft and up to the beginning of their draft. And I tell them, listen, your child is now going into me. When you talk to them, use open-ended questions. In other words, don't ask questions that the answer is yes or no. Right? They say to you, I had a rough day. So say, that's interesting. Tell me what it means to have a rough day. What is a normal day for you like? From the point you wake up until you go to sleep. And why do I do that? Because in the beginning of the army, the most important thing that a parent can do is allow the child to speak. Because if you allow your child to do 80% of the talking, it also allows them to take everything they're going through out of their head and then realign it as they're putting it back into their head. Makes a big difference. Open-ended questions, right? So what's a typical day like? Oh, you wouldn't believe it. I'm now in a combat unit. It's really tough. So tell me, when you say tough, what about it is tough? Okay, what made it tough? And what could change that would make it less tough? That talking, that communication, that empathy helps a child and a child. My youngest daughter is 36 years old. She's still my baby. My mother, I'm 60. At the end of this month, I'm 65 years old. My mother, my mother still calls me her baby. And you know what? I respect that. Okay, so let's take now what we've talked about. What didn't I touch that you want to know about?
I'm going to ask a question. Kind of my work as a therapist. I work with children, I work with teenagers. And in terms of the question of, I'm not talking about major psychiatric issues. I'm talking about medication for, let's say, anxiety or depression, or I think many of the children have gone through Corona and now with the war. How does the Army work with that in terms of, obviously, you want the parents to tell them that the teenager has been taking anti-anxiety medication, but it's not to the effect where it should
It
preclude
does
them from
limit their.
certain jobs in the army.
You're right. Many soldiers in the army are taking medications, and as long as they let their commanders know, it's okay. And as a matter of fact, if that's the case, as long as they are still soldiers, the Army will refill their prescriptions.
Yeah, I ask, one of the questions I always ask when I'm doing an intake is if they are on any medication. And they're 9 times out of 10 honest with me. And I say, and how are you managing with that medication now you're in the army? And they'll tell me, I've been honest with the army and the army fulfilling my prescriptions. I've been on this med prior to coming into the army, and therefore, and this is what I was, if they didn't lie at the beginning and were honest with the army, then they would probably be drafted into the army. The fear of not being drafted causes them to lie, which snowballs into problems. If they're open and honest, they may not get combat the unit that they want, but they will be probably accepted into the army, because there's a lot of kids in the army on medication for anxiety and for depression, for ADHD. Nearly everyone that I speak to is on medication for ADHD. So it's like, if they're honest, then that's fine, because it's normal but it's not normal. I don't want to describe it as normal, but many people today are on medication for anxiety and for depression, especially here in Israel. So it's not going to, I personally don't think it's going to interfere in their service, is it, Mike? It might mean if their depression and anxiety becomes a problem, then that's a different ball game. But if it's maintained, be honest. Be honest.
Okay.
That's all it takes.
My question is, why do we have to tell somebody to tell the truth?
We shouldn't. You're 100%.
We should not, but I feel that some of my experience of what I've heard from parents is the fear that my kid's just going to get this stupid job and it's not challenging and it's really not showing where their ability is, and they have more to contribute than the Army just kind of like boxes them into here, between the depart and where their number is, and then they can't do. I'm not even talking combat. Obviously combat is 25%. At this point, it's 40%, but it's
a job, Nick, we call it. A job.
Yeah, I caveat that two of mine were jobnikim and spent years and years in the army and miluim and incredibly important and meaningful jobs. My daughter was actually in the Air Force as a tomechet lechima with the ICBMs before all of this, which
Really?
was so stressful. Sorry?
Where did she serve?
She was at different bases. She was at Tel Shachar and then in Shemer, and sometimes worked with Palmachim base with a
Ever come to Tel Nof? Was she ever on Tel Nof? Tel Nof was
No.
by Rehovot.
No. She was in Metram Chetz, which is the
I live on the outskirts of that base.
Okay.
So when the rockets go, when the planes take off, all I have to do is look out the window.
Mike, you didn't get to number 5, and we've been talking for 1 hour and 10 minutes. So I think let's finish the Savrishon and get to number 5. If I've missed it, and then we can see what comes from it, if anybody has any questions.
I think Sana wanted to ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to create a connection, a channel, so that these men can easily reach us and easily get emotional support without having to go through therapists and without having to go through the army? Is there any way to create that?
Yeah, don't make them not go to the army.
No. I'm wondering, when they're already in the army, there's no way to
When
create
they're in the army, they're obligated to go through the army.
Okay.
However, a caveat to that is there are plenty of soldiers that don't go through the army, which is actually okay. And they find themselves at our doorstep, and other services as well. And we provide them with therapy. We also help them in many other ways, which is the connection with Mike. Mike is incredible. He won't like this. He won't like the fact I've said that. But we have this wonderful 24/7 emotional support line. I would like every soldier, every lone soldier, the 7,200 of them that there are, to have our phone number. There is no way we can get that out. I've approached the army. I spoke to the department where one of the top psychiatrists is in, the head of the lone soldier program, and they haven't even had the decency to respond to my texts.
We have offered to train commanders and other soldiers to do a better job at what they do. And the answer is, thank you, but no thank you.
We've got it. We can deal with it. Oh, and this is not just us talking about this, Hannah, you should know. I sit on committees at the Knesset. Mike has been there as well. The same questions come up in the Knesset. The same answers come up from the psychiatrists in the Knesset.
Right. This year alone, thus far, and we're in August, 35 soldiers have committed suicide. 35, of which half of them are lone soldiers.
And that's 10 up on the highest recorded previously, isn't it, Mike? The highest recorded
Right.
was 25.
The average in the past 15 years was 17. This year it's jumped already to 35.
Something's got to change.
We're in a very unique crisis in Israel.
Can I share a quick idea?
All right.
There was a experience in Australia where people were committing suicide because of money. So they did a national campaign where they had commercials, 1 hour, about how do you help someone who's going through that if you're just a friend. And what it did is it actually awakened everybody about how to reach out for help. That's what they did.
Do it. Do it here.
Okay, I'll call the TV station tomorrow.
No, I'm being serious.
No. I know. I just was realizing that that's what Australia did, and it worked. It actually worked.
Surely didn't fix our anti-Semitism, though.
Well, I wasn't talking about that.
What else?
So did we get to number 5?
What's number 5?
I don't know, Mike. You're the teacher.
Oh, you mean it's already done.
Yeah, we got up to interviews, and then we got...
Okay, I'm sorry. You have your Hebrew test. You have your IQ test. You have your mental review.
Yeah.
You have your physical.
Yeah.
And as of this war, there is now something that's called Yom HaMea. Sound familiar? Up until this year, only females did Yom HaMea. Starting this year, everybody must do Yom HaMea. What Yom HaMea is it breaks down many topics about life. Your social background, if you're connected to youth group, if you're a leader, a follower, if you like science, and they evaluate everybody on a scale of 1 to 4. And at the end of that test, they tell it to each soldier, based on this test, it shows your strengths are in this, and this, and therefore we're going to send you for an interview at a specific unit that does those things. Now, does it work all the time? No, absolutely not. But that's the goal. That's what they hope would work. I think, for example, the Army has to change its vocabulary and remove the word jobnik from the Hebrew language and replace it with professional. Because a person who works in intelligence and is not a combat soldier is not a by the way idiot. He does a job so that everybody can do their job. But we call them jobniks. That's a mistake of the Hebrew language. Right? If we call them professionals, anshe miktsua, then you can be in Dover Tzahal and be an Ish Miktsah. Incredible. Very simple. Susan's going to fix that one. Susan's going to speak to the chief of staff and change that whole thing.
Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
What else, Susan?
Well, there's many more areas that we could cover, but I'm kind of thinking that I'm wondering if maybe we should come back and do the rest another time, because I know that some people do need to go. I have recorded this so we can send this out, and maybe we can just say, okay, we've done to number 5 and we've covered quite a bit about mental health and the acceptance, the non-acceptance, medication and things like that. Just open it up now for questions quickly, and then we'll come back and we'll finish off another evening the other half of what we need to talk about. How does that sound to you, Mike?
Sounds great. The only thing that I want to bring up to all of you, which is very important, because I come from a background of intelligence. Not intelligence, I'm smart. Intelligence, that's the unit that I was connected to. Okay? When you talk to a soldier, if he tells you private information, you do not share with anybody what unit they are in. Right? So, for example, if a soldier you're helping is in Shesha, right? Shesha is an elite unit, you don't share it. Okay? The other thing, so you see something in the news, it's written down, and I'm telling you, I deal with this one all the time. You do not publish names of people in any way, shape, or form. For example, we know right now that we still have 50 hostages, right? Of which we're hoping 20 are still alive. Do not publish any listing publicly of those names. If the army does not do it and the country doesn't do it, you and I should not be doing it. There was a time, every time a soldier was killed, right away on social media, oh, Chaim Schwartz was killed 10 minutes ago. No. Now you do not put it out there until you get approval. And I'm still connected to many units in the Army. I get lists of what's going on, but I've been doing it long enough that I know I don't share it with anybody. Period. And I have lots of friends who are in the Mossad and in the Shin Bet. And the way we know how to talk is when we know something is going on and we want to tell each other, we say nothing. Nothing. How's it going? Everything's fine. Where are you? I'm in the south. Period. Right? I was in Gaza 2 months ago. You want to know where I was in Gaza? Too bad. You'll never know. That's the way it works. It's when we open our mouth with information that we shouldn't share that we endanger everybody else's life.
Thank you, Mike. I see that Yossi has his hand up.
Go ahead,
Thank
Yossi.
you. Thank you. I wanted to ask, how easy is it for a soldier to access support from you or someone else in the team who does a similar role to you?
Are you talking to
Maybe there isn't someone else who does a similar role to you.
There are lots of people that are doing what we're doing, not in the same format that what I'm doing. But I asked soldiers, how did you find us? Some of them say somebody just put a sticky note on my back. They slapped my back gently and put a sticky note and says, ring the number on that. Ring Susan, you need her. A lot of soldiers is word of mouth. A lot of soldiers is word of mouth. And we get friends of friends and roommates, and sometimes we have a whole house of maybe 4 soldiers. My roommate told me to call you. That it gets complicated then, as you can well imagine, because we've got to find 4 separate therapists. It's complicated, but they do find us. They do find us, and We do.
Josie, that's a great question. If you do your job right, more people, the saying goes like this: if you do something bad, one person will tell 20. If you do something good, one person will tell two.
We
You
need to
understand?
have things then, Mike.
And how easy if a soldier approaches Tikva or how easy is it for them to access support from Mike?
Well, that's simple. That's very simple. I just send them his number.
And he's available
Lightning.
I'm available anytime.
straight away.
Yeah.
Same thing goes the other way around. If I talk to a soldier and I know that they are having a mental problem and they need a therapist, I always call Susan and I say, expect a call from this name. This is her background. This is the problem. You're prepared.
It's quick. It's quick. Generally very quick.
Amazing.
I've literally got well, in all fairness, I'll be honest with you, not just soldiers, but clients who have been in an emergency situation from talking to me, they've got a therapist within 4 minutes sometimes. So, Baruch Hashem, the team are amazing people, all here to help and here to support. And sometimes I don't post every intake that I do because I know that certain people are perhaps best placed to deal with it, position wise, city wise, background wise. Like I had a soldier the other day that came into me, and I knew the therapist immediately to send her to because she was very, very experienced in working with soldiers. And this particular caller needed a really experienced soldier therapist. The therapist I recommended means working with lone soldiers for 7 or 8 years. So, I know her not intimately, but you know what I mean, intimately in a professional relationship. And straight away she was in therapy, literally. So we can do things very quickly. We can turn things around very quickly. We have the wherewithal to do that. October the 7th, on October the 6th, there were 250 lone soldiers receiving free therapy from us on a weekly basis. Those numbers haven't quite come back, in all fairness, but there's a reason for that. And the reason is, and I'll describe it like this. On October the 7th, it was like the sea had gone dry. The only way to describe it. Everybody disappeared. Obviously, everybody had disappeared. And I asked the whole team to reach out to all of their clients that were soldiers to check that they were all safe, because we had no idea if we'd have lost any because of the horrific things on October the 7th. And on this particular occasion, I must say I was very, very proud. Every soldier responded to our texts to say, we're safe, don't worry about us, we'll be back in touch. Right, that's all we needed to hear. But for the first month, it was, I hate to use this word, I think of another. My wording would be, and you'll understand this, dead as a dodo. Okay, you'll see that's a very English expression. It means extinct. And literally nobody was calling, nobody was coming to us at all for any form of therapy. And that's simply why, because this country was completely frozen. It was numb. It just couldn't function. It took everything for people just to get up on a morning out of their beds and get their kids dressed and to think about what maybe you might be making for breakfast. It was the people that in Israel will understand. It was just that kind of momentum. Slowly, it's picking up, but it's still not there. It's still people are reaching out for services, but not sure whether they need services. There's plenty of organizations offering services. We work with low-cost therapy and free therapy, which is an advantage for a lot of the Olim here in Israel, because therapy can be expensive. In any country, therapy can be, and it has a place. People have a place to make a living here. I also have I had quite a good private practice before October the 7th. My practice has deliberately waned. That's my intention. I've done it intentionally to turn my work into what we're doing here now. But there is a place, and everybody needs to earn a living, but then there is a place where there are people who can't maintain those fees. And that's the niche that we work within our organization. And that offers people who could not go into therapy, or people who were in therapy. And I've heard this story on numerous occasions, and it's no word of a lie, who has said to me, it was a choice between staying in therapy and putting food on my table. I had to take the food on my table and stop my therapy. Can you help me? And we've been able to fill that niche. So we are there. We're there, right? We've been in existence as an organization 10 years. We've had the mental health program for 6 years, and I've been the director for 5 years. So it's growing, it's evolving. I'm always open to change. I'm always open to criticism. I'm always open to positive comments and how I can take this forward in a better way. People can just reach out to me. I'm very open. That's who I am. So I like to think that we can work quickly and smartly with the team of people that we have. And Am Yisrael Chai. That's the whole reason that we're here. All of us is Am Yisrael Chai. No other reason. We believe in this beautiful nation and this beautiful people, and we believe in the Jewish nation as a whole. And the 24/7 emotional support line is also open in America. The number for America, and you can ring from America and Canada at a local cost in Israel. So it's not a call charge that's going to be expensive. And you can ring, originally it was open for parents and families and friends of lone soldiers. But now that line is open for anything that people want to ring about. We'll field any calls on that support line, and we're going to change the flyer and produce a new flyer for it, because it's important that people outside of Israel also have somebody that they can talk to that understands what it's like to be here. Of course, there's a whole safety net there as well that layers into that, obviously. And that's what we're preparing, the safety net within that. But it will be done, like it was with the support line, up and running in 3 weeks. We will be done. And I'm very proud of each one and everybody who's amongst my team. In the Yiddish word, I'm kfelling, because it's just the most incredible gathering of human beings that I could have ever wished to meet in my whole life. And that's what it's given me. So thank you, everyone.
And if any of you have any questions for me, Susan, you want to give them my number, you can call me anytime.
Pleasure. Just ask me and I'm happy to provide Mike's number to you. And if there's anything that I can do for anybody that need help or anything of that nature, you know where I am. And I will put this recording into Tikva Line's volunteer section, and I'll also put it into the training file as well. So you'll be able to access that training through there. I'll send it to Tanya as well, so she can send it to anybody who may have come through Tanya. Okay? And we're always looking for new new help as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
I'll let you know when we're going to do part 2.
Thanks very much.
Okay, Mike, thank you.
Good luck, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So much. Thank you,
Bye.
Susan. Thank you, Mike.
Take care of my soldiers. They are my kids.
You know, Mike, I gave a talk to Hadassah Chicago last week about our Lone Soldier program, and I channeled your words. I've been to other talks that you've given here for us at Tikva. I've taken copious notes, and I quoted you and spoke about what we did. And when you said, they're my kids, I spoke about that, and everybody was moved. And one of the people in the audience was Hirsch Goldberg, Poland's grandmother, who's a member of Hadassah. So she spoke with me afterwards. She asked me about you and what we do at Tikva, and it was very moving. So I'm very moved by what you do, what we do, Susan, by what you do, what you make possible for all of us, for all of them. So just to give you that feedback.
It's all Susan. It's all Susan.
She's incredible.
I'm going to stop the recording there. Hang on 1 second. Why is it whenever I need to do something,